Okay, today is Sunday, 16th of February, about 11 a.m. Temperature 18 degrees centigrade, about 64 Fahrenheit. Still quite cool, but still quite a lot of sunshine. So the question today is filtration, yes or no? As usual, for such questions, the answer is it depends. I always have small sponge filters, but I'll explain the reason for that later. And I'll start by saying I'm not a scientist, I'm not an expert, and probably I've oversimplified what I'm going to say. And this stuff is a bit geeky, but I think it needs to be a bit geeky. It's the only way I can explain what I mean. Now, it seems to me there are a lot of misconceptions about filtration, which is usually thought about in terms of dealing with ammonia produced by fish. Now, ammonia is toxic to fish even at low concentrations, so it's necessary to have beneficial bacteria in the water tank to eliminate the ammonia. So fish produce ammonia directly through their gills from the bloodstream when they break down proteins for energy. And there's a smaller amount of ammonia produced in their urine. But I said most of it comes directly from the bloodstream through their gills, directly into the water. The often mentioned beneficial bacteria that are required to change the toxic ammonia into relatively harmless nitrates. These are called autotrophic nitrifying bacteria. They only deal with ammonia and they can't exist floating around in the water. They need to attach themselves to a surface to grow and multiply. However, the amount of this ammonia directly, and I emphasize directly, produced by small fish such as MEDAKA is quite small, and consequently the size of the surface area required to grow enough bacteria is also quite small. For example, one MEDAKA maybe weighs 0.7 gram and probably produces about 1 milligram of ammonia a day. And depending on conditions of temperature, pH, amount of oxygen in the water, if those are good conditions, the bacteria need 10 square centimeters to grow on. If you've poor conditions of temperature, pH, oxygen, maybe you need up to 40 square centimeters of bacteria to grow on to deal with ammonia from one MEDAKA. And this is about 10 square centimeters, right? In really good conditions, that's the only area the bacteria need to grow on to process ammonia from one MEDAKA, 10 square centimeters. Or in very poor conditions for bacteria, this is 40 square centimeters. So again, it's not a very big area for bacteria to grow on to treat ammonia from one MEDAKA. And just to illustrate maybe the amount of ammonia produced by a group of MEDAKA, and what surface area you need to allow for these beneficial bacteria. This is probably about the smallest sponge filter you can get. I have a lot of these. They cost the equivalent of maybe $2. And they, within all the pores, you add it all together, all the pores, the surface area you get is about 550 square centimeters. And obviously, with a sponge filter, you should get good oxygen conditions. So you can probably allow for maybe 10 square centimeters of surface area for the bacteria to grow on for one fish. And so you're talking about one small sponge filter like this maybe is enough processing power for ammonia for about 50 MEDAKA fish. Now, it's unlikely you're going to put 50 MEDAKA fish in a tank with just this small sponge filter, but it gives you an indication of the sort of quantity of ammonia that might be produced. But it's not as simple as that. In addition to this ammonia directly discharged into the water by fish through their gills, ammonia is also indirectly produced by the decomposition of organic wastes in the water, such as fish poop, decaying plants, excess food, etc. And it's hardly ever mentioned that there are usually far larger amounts of other different bacteria called heterotrophic bacteria in a fish tank, which break down all these organic compounds to produce this additional ammonia. So the total amount of ammonia in the water is the ammonia direct from the fish plus the ammonia indirectly from decomposition of organic waste. The amount of direct ammonia from MEDAKA is quite small. However, the amount of indirect ammonia may be quite large, depending on the amount of organic waste you might have. Now, in here, in this tank, there would be fish poop and a little bit maybe from decomposing floating plants, well, there's very little, and also if I fed excess food, that would also decompose. However, the fish, even if I feed excess food, it's easily seen by the fish on the bottom of the tub. If they get hungry later, they might go down the bottom and try and eat it if I do happen to feed a bit too much. But with no floating plants, if I didn't have floating plants, it reduces the risk of any additional ammonia from decomposition of the plants, and without any substrate for the excess food to be concealed below the substrate, again that reduces, a bare tub reduces the risk of ammonia from any excess food. So, looking to start with at the no filtration option, as I say, the question is filtration, yes or no. So, no filtration option, which I think is, if you like, usually the traditional or common method in Japan. This is a container very often used. It's called an NV22 box. They also now use other different containers, but this one maybe was almost the original one they started to use. It's usually black instead of blue and holds about 20 litres or 5 gallons of water. And importantly, it's quite shallow. So it has no filtration, bare bottom, no substrate, and no, or sometimes only very nominal floating plants. So there's no substrate for excess food to accumulate and no plants to decay, resulting in no or very little organic waste to decompose and indirectly produce the additional ammonia. Therefore, only have to deal with the ammonia directly produced by the fish, but without filtration and aeration within the box to help beneficial bacteria multiply. Conditions may be quite poor for the bacteria, so assume each fish produces enough ammonia that requires 40 square centimeters of surface area for the bacteria to grow on. So, for example, assume 15 adult MEDAKA in this NV22 box without filtration and without aeration. The beneficial bacteria should be at least, say, for 15 fish, 40 square centimeters. But fish should be at least, say, 600 square centimeters. And it can be seen at the bottom of the box, which is about 1,500 square centimeters, is mostly covered by biofilm, which will include these bacteria. So ammonia shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, there should be probably enough bacteria there to deal with the ammonia from 15 fish. But without aeration, it's important that, as in this box, water depth is shallow so that bacteria have a reasonable amount of oxygen. Deeper boxes or tubs, there would be poor oxygen conditions maybe at the bottom of the tub. And also, with this sort of no filtration, no aeration option, usually recommended for weekly 30% water changes, and this will obviously reduce the risk of ammonia building up over a period of time. And looking at the with filtration option, I think there's more than enough information around for anyone to pick and mix whatever combinations of plants, substrates or filters, etc. they prefer. But personally, this is my preference for keeping MEDAKA outdoors in my location. To start with, no plants except for minimal floating plants. I'm not good at keeping plants. They die and rot, causing additional ammonia. And I firmly believe that MEDAKA are far happier with no rooted plants, because that gives them more space to swim around in. And so that means no substrate either. And I much prefer a bare bottom tub where fish poop and any excess food can't accumulate in the substrate and decompose to produce additional ammonia. You can see the poop that's deposited probably better in this one. That's after about 5 days accumulation of fish poop. A couple of days time, weekly water change, I'll just easily and quickly siphon it out, and that stops any more decomposition to produce ammonia. However, I have small sponge filters in most tubs like this. and that's mainly because I can't have shallow tubs like the one I showed before, the NV22 box, because there's only about 150 millimeters depth of water, and in my summer climate there can be days when rainfall exceeds 150 mm, so you've got a 100% immediate water change within a few hours, with acidic rain, which is not good for the MEDAKA. So with deeper tubs like mine, it's essential to have some aeration, to maintain, good oxygen levels, particularly in the summer when temperatures may approach 40 degrees centigrade. And if I'm going to have aeration, then I might as well have these sponge filters instead of air stones, and having the extra surface area for beneficial bacteria is an added benefit. And that's maybe about enough talking about filtration, except maybe I'll just go to my pond, which I haven't shown for quite a long time. Last summer I went to change it into a MEDAKA pond, but lots of MEDAKA in there, but dragonfly larvae ate all the MEDAKA I put in. So I'm going to try again this summer. At the moment, some small goldfish and a lot of small platters in there, just to eat any mosquito larvae. So down this end there are a couple of big sponge filters, and up here there's a trickle filter. At one time I used to have some very big goldfish in here. It's a relatively small pond, so I had all this filtration, but the filtration is still functioning. It's vastly over filtered, even if I make it put a couple of hundred MEDAKA in here, but as it's still functioning, I'll let it run. I mean, in here mainly filter media are these pot scrubbers. They're very cheap and they've got very good open surface area within the pores, so they work very well. And so that's it, as usual, very long-winded, so that's definitely enough about filtration. Okay.